Hello and welcome to Wait, It Gets Better, the improvisational storytelling podcast, where every week we humbly bring you, the listeners, a story. I'm, of course, Levi.
I'm Reed.
And I'm Seth.
And we are here to bring you. Yep, already said that. Okay, sorry, I'm a little bit of sunstroke today. Welcome everyone for the fourth and final episode of Medicated Bandaids, where we are going to spend a few minutes just talking about the episode and see if anyone has any cool ideas about how it could have ended, or talk about our inspirations. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. Anyone have any particulars about the story that they remember?
I really like how I think it's in the third one Reed brought in the dream prophecy. I really think that tipped the kind of the scale of the whole story from being just pretty amazing to, I don't know, pretty epic.
Yeah, can you tell us what that dream prophecy was again?
So it's the idea that, in this kind of this chivalry, and they're all, kind of dueling each other, over all of their offenses and stuff like that. But they, the one character in particular, but then it kind of was broadly where then everybody kind of was paying attention to these dreams, and they would, before they would duel, they would gauge and kind of ask each other, have you seen this day? Because then everyone, would put stock in like having seen the future through a dream and how something could be, could play out.
Right.
And so like if one of them had seen that day and knew that they would come to a loss, they could back out or, take the loss without, having to lose their life. Or in the one case, the wise old woman found that it would give her a kind of a small glimpse at the future that could happen, and then she would make action to change it.
Right. I liked,
and so I think
as part of that, I liked how the fighters were kind of fighter philosophers. They weren't just like brutes who would, some of them maybe were, but a lot of them weren't just like brutes, just fighting people because my honor, There was a lot of they had to be their own lawyer. They had to figure out what level of reaction this was. And then inside of that, a lot of them turned into philosophers in order to kind of make sense of the fact that they were kind of the mediators of what was plainly saw as just justice. They were the ones who were sort of deciding that. And therefore there was a lot of, I just have this vision in my mind of a sort of a cobblestone street with kind of like a open air cafe, and there's just people standing around, drinking, sipping wine, and they're kind of talking about the finer points of morality and ethics. And then across the street, someone bumps into somebody, or a pre-planned quote unquote bumping into was done, where a woman put herself into the place of being bumped into by a key figure and therefore called him out. And then her hero, her champion, who just happened to be traveling with her, cuts the guy down. And they're just sitting there kind of like watching this thing happen, kind of philosophizing about if humanity could continue on doing this. But they're also, all wearing swords and stuff because they might be called up in any minute to do that fight. Kind of Three Musketeers-esque, is kind of the picture my brain was. Three Musketeers-esque, but then also kind of Count of Monte Cristo, revenge and plotting and stuff like that. And Reed, I have a question. Did you name your character Royce after Royce White?
Yes, I like. Well, there's two Royces in my world right now that I'm really high on. Royce White, of course, is running against someone for an incumbent U.S. senator, and he's somebody that I really like. And then I really like Royce Lewis, who plays third base for the Twins.
Nice.
So Royce is kind of that was how, two kind of people high on my list. And that's how Royce Rondo got his name. Actually, I started out calling him Royce Hondo, but you changed it to Rondo. So I really? Yeah, I just went with it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And I have to say that this was the most fun I've ever had with SBOABIAR, something based on a book I am reading. Because first of all, Seth jumps into government type about this whole, trial by combat and all that. And then the whole thing from the book I was reading, Dune, about how the Fremen, would challenge, for clan leader and stuff. And then I also, the whole kind of thing of prescient dreams, that was
right.
Webbed into it. That was where I got my prophecy, the prophecy dreams. And then of course, along with that, the Royce had that dream that he was going to be confronted by Bruce, head of Champions of Valor, and that he was going to use the tricksy flip out poison blade, on his hip. And so they get into a grappling mode, and then he could, nail him. And that was like right out of that book. And it's not often that you get to carry that theme through a whole 3 episodes.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was fun. And of course, how could you not? I mean, talk about a target-rich environment for something based on a book I'm reading. If you're reading Dune, come on.
I know, right?
So
It's got kind of, it carries most stories inside of it.
That's exactly right.
I would say if you listen to the episodes, you might be able to pick up my general distaste for certain aspects of modern mental health care. With the psychologist kind of believing that he could tell people to just kind of chill out and it's okay. And, I've never taken medication for mental health issues, but I know of a couple of people that it has sort of significantly impacted their life in a negative way. And I am not here to just naysay all sort of mental health medication, because it's real and true, and I believe that exists to an extent. I just can kind of imagine if we say that we have the answer to something, how much we just won't have we actually don't have the answer to it. It's like this. Anyways, it's a complex subject, and I don't want to turn the whole thing into it. But I have some distrust of doctors and their diagnoses.
And then
from one standpoint, you could broadly put it across most of and again, not that doctors aren't great and they can do precise surgeries and fix bones and all that. But when it comes down to a lot of times that you see, at least in today's standard, where, they have, like the big pharma idea, throw this drug at it.
Right.
And now I'm no doctor, but just throwing a chemical compound at a problem inside of a body that's constantly flushing and chemically altering itself, given on so many different aspects, you just, from a logical standpoint, I would think you'd realize that really isn't going to fix or be as helpful as, one might hope or wish it to be.
Right.
One of the most tragic, well, it's a tragedy anytime, but in suicide by cop episodes where you have a hostage situation or a standoff and the guy ends up forcing the hand and to save bystanders or hostages or whatever, the cops end up gunning the guy down, And a frightening statistic is that most of those are mentally ill people off their meds.
Right.
So
absolutely.
That's the thing of it is I hope that I would have enough sense to I have I hope that there's another thing, like people, bipolar specifically, there's like 40% of people that suffer from bipolar issues are psychologically not capable of comprehending their situation. In other words, if they don't have people in their life that they trust that help them stay on their meds, their tendency will be, oh, what do I need this for? Especially when they're feeling good.
Right.
And then that's...
I guess my thing is what would happen if society changed enough that being bipolar was just kind of should be accepted as a way of being alive. And you have a person coming to someone saying, no, you don't understand. I'm really sick. I can't function in this way. That's the whole thing. Is the guy came to the psychiatrist, the wise old man, and said, I need help. And the guy was blinded by his sort of normal modus operandi.
Right.
How he was supposed to just normally deal with people.
Right.
And he needed someone to take an individual look at him and say, how is this person different than what I'm sort of normally used to?
Yeah. That was a very, that was a powerful element to this story. Because it's like most great stories, are about the characters are something that a wider audience can identify with. And I think that was an important element in this story that, wow, this isn't far-fetched at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like Reed, you and I have both had a friend who we saw diminish in his capacity as a human being because he was medicated, but he wasn't given continual help.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
he went from being one thing to having some issues and becoming medicated, but then the follow through was never there. It was, here's
Right.
your pills. You're going to be good now. Go.
Yeah.
And it ruined his life.
Yep.
And that's kind of, I like that because that's kind of the sort of the launching off point for the psychiatrist. And then Royce was there who saw this, and that was kind of his big change.
Right.
You know, and there was the magic medication, the thing that everyone took. I don't remember if I ever gave it a name.
Yeah.
And it was kind of ruining everyone's perspective. And then it was only through this sort of detox that you could get this other perspective, which is why Royce sort of became this other person and was able to sort of rise to this place, you know.
Yep.
With some of this topic, and it turns it to, I guess, a bit more comical note, and I don't mean to do that, but in a, you know, putting down way, part of like, then it's like, okay, well then what extra help can we give these people, you know, aside from just medication? You might have seen it years ago. The Onion had a skit where it was the whole panel where it's like, you know, the one lady filling in for the other guy who's always never there. And it's like the whole panel of experts talking about what more can we do for schizos.
Yeah.
And so they're like, well, you know, they're not very confident. So maybe if the government could step in and like broadcast like at a note that maybe only they could hear, so it would just sound like a voice in their head. No, that might not be enough. You know, maybe if we could, you know, get like different colors to have hidden messages in them, and maybe messages that would say, you know, it's like we're watching you for your protection, of course, and they would understand that, but it would just be like, we're watching you.
Yeah. And then you could
or maybe if they could
yeah, you know, and then you could monetize the whole thing in by throwing in subliminals. Smoke Lucky Strike. Smoke Lucky Strike.
But it was a great comical like thing, because everything they're suggesting is like very much the thing that would actually make them much worse.
Yeah.
But, you know, and it's the Onion, and, you know, it's just that comical look at the experts, you know, supposed experts all sitting around talking about all the great things they could do for these people because they really want to help. But in the end, these things are actually not very helpful.
Yeah, another idea I had with the psychiatrist at the beginning was, you know how we look at the Middle Ages and see that people would like bloodletting and putting leeches on you and stuff.
Right.
And we were like, that's insane. How could they think that would help? And then now, in the more recent years, we're finding out that there are certain species of leeches that you can sort of have on you that will like lower your cholesterol, right? And so it kind of begs the question, did the people before the Middle Ages know something and then somehow the information was lost?
Yeah.
And then all we see is the Middle Ages where they're putting leeches on people. And we're like, why would you do that? But the reality is no, they actually knew something in the same way the psychiatrist is quote unquote medicating, right? He's in the Middle Ages area, right? He's operating under this idea that, you know, he's basically reading from a manual that was transcribed 100 times, basically, the idea being. And it's like they would always shorten a little bit here and a little bit there to make it easier for the transcription process, you know? That concept and idea. So he's operating in this kind of, if you look at like the movie Idiocracy, you know, where they're doing things that are kind of like what you're supposed to do, but they're not doing them well. It's like they're going through the motions, but they don't have any context behind it, and therefore it ends up being ridiculous. I think that's kind of the thing I was wanting to communicate with this psychiatrist, is that he was doing everything he thought he should have been doing, and then this kind of wake-up call, and then you see the renaissance out of that, you know, as he kind of wakes up to this and becomes actually educated and becomes actually, you know, informed on how things work. And then he helps Royce through that. And then they help the world through that, you know, through the psychiatrist's daughter and everything like that.
What do you mean? We need electrolytes. Why shouldn't plants need electrolytes all the time?
Yeah, it's what they crave.
I'm thinking that next time I go to the doctor, I'm going to just ask him to like give me something to draw out evil humors.
Yeah, you should try it. See what he says.
Yeah.
He like goes into the back and brings out like a giant dusty tome.
Yeah.
Opens it up.
Yeah.
Methinks here you need to bathe. You need to drink this silver and bathe in a full moon.
Yeah. That's what I suffer from bad humors. I'm sorry.
That's fine. You're stuck in the Middle Ages. And who knows? Maybe we're stuck in the Middle Ages now in like our thought process and thinking about things. You know, like it seems like every month there's a new sort of medical advancement or a new scientific advancement that's just kind of mind blowing. And it's like, how much are we just kind of apes clinking rocks together? You know, I think about that sometimes. Anyways, one of the things I liked about this story was how it could be really political. You know, I always enjoyed Deus Damar from the Wheel of Time, this kind of political positioning.
Yes.
You know, you see it.
Game of Houses.
Yeah, that kind of thing. I always really enjoy stuff like that. You know, the positioning of here and the support of this over there and the backstabs and the smiles in the front. You know, as I've gotten semi-involved in my political scene,
Yeah.
it's amazing how it's just very true. You know, you think, oh, it's just small city politics. You know, how backstabby can you get? And it's like, oh, you can get pretty backstabby. But I always enjoy that. You know, it's one of the things I really wish that there had been sort of more houses involved in like the Dune series. You know, there's House Carino, there's House Harkonnen, and then there's House Atreides.
Yeah.
And I'd always wished, you know, there was like 100 houses like that. You know, maybe Herbert had an idea to include them in some way, but it would have been cool to see this slow moving beast of all of these houses kind of working and sort of, you know, working together or against each other. Let's see here. Anyone else have any cool thoughts about the story? Any philosophies that were said in the story that you feel like ring true in real life? Should we start the government type? It's time to start the government type.
Yeah.
Right.
Of course. Why not?
Might make.
I think you're wrong, Seth. Come down to my house and let's duke it out.
All right. At noon.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that I think we missed out on was Seth, you introduced this weapon type, and I think that it would have, you know, I could have seen this story being fleshed out more where we actually had some of the action scenes where there was more fighting. You know, we just kind of talked about, that this was going on, but you know, you talked about this kind of channeling chi sort of, you know, into your blade or your weapon, you know.
Yeah, so in the anime that Seth was talking about, Chrome Shell Rigos, you have these weapon types, and like the sword looks like a little box that you hold in your hand, and then when you channel your chi into it, it becomes, and there's people have different weapon types, you know, like spears or broadswords or whatever. I always thought it's kind of cool, but it would take like 100 pages to like really kind of let people understand exactly what it was. You know, well, that's kind of the beauty of television is that you can just kind of have something and it's like, oh, it's a weird kind of weapon, and then slowly explain what it is. But then in a book, when you try to explain that, you know, not saying it's a bad idea, it was just it's been my experience trying to explain really elaborate magic systems.
Yeah.
What did you have to say, Seth?
Oh, nothing particular.
Great. All right. Well, I think that's the end of that one. And we will see everyone next week for the beginning of a brand new, fresh off the shelf story. If you liked this episode, if you liked this series, let me know. Send us an email at waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com. Or, you know, message us on Twitter or, you know, add us on Twitter at @getsbettercast. We would love to hear from you. We'd love to see you. We would love to shout you out. We'd love to give you a high five, a virtual high five. And until next week, everyone just don't panic, okay? We're going to be back next week. Bye, everybody.